Hi everyone. Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about um, how to be more compassionate and caring towards yourself as a business owner and as a light worker. Okay, so I don't have to tell most people that we are going through a lot of challenges on the collective level, but many of us are also going through a lot of personal challenges, and that can come in all shapes and sizes. And as part of the awakening of humanity, and is also as part of running a spiritual business, you are faced with all sorts of difficult challenges. And we have challenges in life. We have challenges in relation to the collective, in relation to society. And when, society is going through shifts, that impacts us all. But also part of our own involvement can create, it can create sometimes conflict. It can also create sometimes distress and overwhelm. And part of, it's like, if you look at it, like even the healer's journey or the hero's journey, if we think about, first of all, example, we're all wounded healers, and that's one of the most important things to remember is that we all come into this work, and everyone at a fundamental level has the potential to come from the wounded healer, and turn their wounding into a positive thing. And we all have things in our life that we can turn into soothe people, help people through our own misfortunes, our own challenges. So it can come to different levels in everyone in society. But obviously, a lot of us that come into these type of roles in a spiritual business or a holistic business are coming from a certain consciousness that is related to the wounded healer. But within every individual is the hero's journey, right? Or the potential for us to be, to go down that. We all have a path that can take us towards having different experiences that lead us along the hero's path, the hero's journey, and towards of self-realization, self-actualization, and so many other things. Now, it definitely isn't always easy. It definitely isn't easy. And sometimes we go through that path and we can feel on top of the world, and we can feel as if we're making great strides. And then there's other times we hit blocks, or that other times we experience a lot of chaos, a lot of uncomfortableness, even loss, wounding, and it comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And it's those times that's really important to be more caring and compassionate towards ourselves and even towards others, even when it's difficult, even when it's hard, right? And even when we make mistakes or we're not as compassionate or caring as what we normally would be, it's important that we bring ourselves back. And this is where, for example, archetypes like the caregiver or the mother archetype, right, can remind us of that unconditional love, that ability to move into an energy of unconditional love. If you think about the mother, the unconditional love that a mother gives for the child, right? And the unconditional sacrifices that the mother gives for the child. So a mother will often do so many things for the children and do things to take care and nurture and protect their child. And, you know, when we look at inner child work, there's so many layers to inner child work, and it's so important that you understand the different layers to inner child work and the tiny fragments and the things that are really important to keep someone safe. Because if you don't, you can re-trigger the trauma. Now, one of the most fundamental things is to keep the child feeling safe. So some aspects of inner child work, there's certain stages that it's important that the child only does certain things that it feels comfortable with, right? I'll give you an example where, you know, people can get this a bit wrong. I remember getting some it was kind of healing and therapy sessions of another therapist. And I'll be honest, at the time I didn't really know her very well. She was very nice and everything, but I booked 3 sessions, and it was a kind of little bit of like, I don't mean a knee-jerk reaction. It was because what she was offering, right? And I remember what happened. I was so disappointed by the sessions. And first of all, what she was trying to do was cram in absolutely everything in her sessions, because she knew, like many as in the healing and coaching and therapy industry, we may have a lot of tools in our toolbox. So it's always she was trying to use everything. But also I remember her trying to bring inner child work, and it was very clear she didn't understand the most basic fundamentals of inner child work in relation to keeping the client in a state of soothing, softness, you know, security, that comfort feeling. She's taken a walk while she's doing a session with me, and she's had dogs and she's got all this going on. And she's actually doing the session through Facebook Messenger. Paid quite a lot of money for this session. And everything about it did not make me feel safe, did not make me feel secure. I ended up not trusting her. And it wasn't, I didn't trust her as the person, I didn't trust her as a therapist in relation to being able to help my inner child, because she was all over the place. And in some ways, I felt she started to realise that I was I was a trained therapist in many areas, which she hadn't realised. And in some ways, it was almost like she was trying to prove herself. So what happened, she was moving in many ways, she was moving archetypes. She was moving into maybe trying to be the influencer or the teacher, or, you know, someone that can prove what, you know, their value in some way. And she forgot what was fundamental in that type of work, and is the nurturing, caregiving role, right? And it's the same as ourselves. If we don't put our inner child in that nurturing, supportive, motherly space, we're very critical of, you know, the inner child, or we're very critical of our wounding and really constantly beating ourselves up, if we're really harsh on ourselves, right? And we are not coming from a place of unconditional love and compassion, well, guess what? We can re-traumatize that inner child. We are putting through that inner child through a lot of trauma. It doesn't need to be put through a lot of what you're doing is you're causing that inner child a lot of chaos, right? Now, the mother archetype represents not just protection, it also represents truths and being able to, you know, be honest with the child. There's lots of elements to it. But the most important thing when you're going through really difficult shifts in life, when you're going on that journey, is that when you find extremely challenging, right? Of course, we have to be able to tap into different tools in our toolbox, so to speak, and different strengths. So there is some, for example, sometimes we need to be a wee bit more stronger, need to be a wee bit more like the warrior, or we need to be more like sovereign being. Sometimes we need a bit of more like the jester, the entertainer, the clown archetype, or maybe more like the lover archetype, where it's all about deep connection and the small things that, all the nice things and the things that can make us feel special. All these kind of things are part of life and also part of business. But if we cannot give ourselves the compassion and care, it's very hard to give it to other people. And if we don't give ourselves that compassion and care, guess what? It shows up as resentment. And it can show up as major triggers for other people that are on the receiving end energetically of that conflict. And it doesn't have to be verbally, people can often feel it energetically, right? So when we're all in suffering and all in pain, we all go back to, in many ways, an inner child wounding, right? Now, if you look at the inner child, right, we all have certain things that formed when we're children that some take a real hold of us, right? And we find it very difficult to move out of that pattern. And one of the big reasons is that, some people, we assume it's just because of one first trauma. But most people have lots of trauma. Every single person in the world has trauma, and they have different types of trauma. And one of the biggest misunderstandings that many people face and have is that they assume that the biggest traumas are related to the most, what you would think would be traumatic experiences. When actually, sometimes that's not always the truth, because it's perception and it can depend on so many factors why something would be more traumatic, right? And one of the biggest challenges is when people have reinforced trauma. Something is repeated over and over and over again. So it becomes an external habit. And that can come off the form of things like physical abuse, physical trauma, obviously mental abuse, mental trauma, emotional abuse, mental trauma. And there's also spiritual, you could say there's spiritual things can happen there as well. And that's a whole other subject. There's many layers to that. And sometimes you need to be quite open-minded to see all that. But at the moment, society is going through such a rocky time. It's rocking the foundations of, in many ways, everything we know. It's rocking the foundations of the structure that our life was built on, and the structures that we were born to perceive was the reality, right? So it's like the easiest way to explain it is when you brought up my family, right? And for example, if you have a mother and father, right? And your foundations, and you live in a home, you live in a certain place, and all of a sudden, everything that you thought you knew about your mother or father was completely wrong. Okay, think about someone who discovers that actually, this is not their parents; they actually were adopted, and maybe then there's something else happens at that point in their life. Everything crumbles. So the reality of who their parents were and their siblings is wrong. And maybe something else happens, like they have to move house. They have to change for lots of different things. So everything in the reality has suddenly shifted, right? And if we look at the orphan child, when the orphan child feels abandoned and lost, right, they can go, we all have mixtures of both, like positive and light. We all have the orphan archetype within us. But that child can, out of strength, can find great independence, right? And responsibility, but also out of that can feel completely abandoned, can completely lost, can feel completely like completely isolated and not be part of a family, not be part of a tribe, not belong in any way. So they are completely abandoned. Now, the positive aspect of that, the orphan, is that you have someone who has the ability to and learns to stand up for themselves, learns to be independent, and learns that it's an important aspect of life to also, no matter what is going on in life, is to pick yourself up and do things yourself, not rely or expect someone else to do it. Right now, if the orphan does not heal its wounds, it can fall into sorts of like the victim. It could even become a bit of the princess archetype, where it always expects that it's knight in shining armor, or someone that's like a damsel in distress expects a knight in shining armor to fix everything for them, to maybe even financially support them, to always do certain things, and be their kind of bailout, right? So they never take self-responsibility. They may even look at their parent figures to, in many ways, bail them out, right? So there's two elements of everything. Now, inner child wounding shows up in all sorts of ways. So other people, when they go through really situations which are breaking down, can very much go into the freeze response, but and that can show up in all different archetypes as well. But and can be also like the orphan archetype. But what can happen there is, like, if you look at the innocent archetype can go in, it hides its head in the sand. It just refuses. It's always looking at the positive, but never wants to see what is underneath, and never wants. It's like there's almost the reality. They want the reality always to be dreamlike and idealistic, and do not want to face certain things. So they will do anything to pretend that certain things are not happening, and that's not the truth. So they are sometimes they're dreamers, and they've got their heads in the clouds, and they tend to sometimes are so scared to go into the deep, they'll live at the surface, right? Now, of course, the positive aspect of the innocent is that they can have this amazing, there's some aspects to it that is similar to the alchemist, where they have this ability to see positive change and can see positivity in situations, right? Now, it doesn't matter what archetype. Well, it does matter in one way, but what I mean is, no matter what archetype and traits and patterns that you're falling into at the moment, right? No matter what is showing up for you in your wounding, the most important thing is, first of all, being objective, right? Not getting entangled and dragged down by it. Because remember, when you get entangled with something, it's the mind. It is the ego, and the ego pulls us down. If you spend a lot of time in your head and you're constantly analysing things, you could spend, there's some people that spend most of the time procrastinating or ruminating, and it leads to all sorts of mental health challenges and distress for themselves, because they are in their head and they're not in the present moment, first of all. They are caught in the what ifs, or, I should have done this better, or too busy trying to analyze everything or judging also things, or, or looking, always focusing on the mental perspective. And we all do different degrees. I mean, I'm quite a mental, person, even though I'm very creative, I'm quite a very mental perspective person. But I'm lucky that I have a lot of tools. And one of the things is because I've practiced meditation daily for 30 years. is that gives you, I suppose, a support, and it gives you a way of being able to naturally be more present. And also some of the meditation tools and things that I use are quite advanced. They're not just normal meditation. I've been able to access things that really fast track your way into deep stillness, which means that I can, a lot of times, unless there's real trauma going on, or a lot of stuff personally going on, most times I can just very quickly go in to that stillness, right? For me, my triggers are environmental noise and too many people. Then I can get into stillness, but my body, it's like my mind can get into stillness, but my body can struggle, right? But what I was going to say is, the more compassionate and caring and motherly you can be towards yourself, is that you bring yourself into a space of love, right? And it's so important for us to have compassion and love for ourselves and for other people at the moment. And even for people that we may not align with, we may not agree with, we may think they have other agendas, or they may not see things, there's so many layers to this. But the reality is that when we can bring ourselves into more compassion, we add it, we're kind of almost, we're softening the edges. We're softening the edges of our own hostility towards ourselves. We're being more self-loving, and that makes it easier to raise our vibration, right? When you can start being a wee bit more self-loving, it helps to raise the vibration when you're feeling low, when you're struggling, when you have certain challenges, particularly things that maybe are out with your control, right? We're in a situation at the moment where some of our biggest triggers are coming up. That is part of the awakening. It's the biggest triggers. It's also biggest shifts in reality, biggest shifts in perception and beliefs. It's like lots of things are going to come to the surface and making big realizations about ourselves. Our biggest areas of self-sabotage. Also, one of the biggest things that's very common, unfortunately, in our industry, and is showing up a lot at the moment, is, I'm saying it's common in this industry. Probably what I mean is it's more common now. It wasn't before, right? But what's happened now in society generally is, and it's filtrated its way into the holistic and spiritual industry, is people expecting to run before they can jump, and want to be experts and want to get to a certain level. And they're almost resentful and pedo, or as serious issues with people that are maybe doing better than them, or are using certain tools and techniques that maybe are a wee bit more advanced for them, or has managed to get a course, or is doing this and doing that. But we all have our individual path. But some of us have been in the industry for 30 years, and we've sacrificed a life to doing certain things. I know some people say to me, it's almost like, I remember having one client and she said to me, but I want to do what you do. So how can I do it? And it was almost like she just thought I was just going to be able to teach her in a couple of hours, something that had evolved in my style of teaching, my understanding of things that had evolved over, at that point, I think was what, about 26, 27 years, all sorts of elements of things. And it was like she wanted the push of the button, right? So what causes that? Well, first of all, that is hard not recognizing and completely, how could you say, first of all, it's to do with self-worth, self-esteem, but not recognizing that where she is right now is enough, and not being fully in her own power and in her own gifts, and being immersed enough in her own gifts to be passionate and being happy where she is, right? When you are looking at other people and you're triggered by what other people are doing. There is something within you that is not aligned, right? You're not fully in your power, or you're not being honest with yourself, but that's okay. None of us have got it perfect. But it's so important to remember that also, it's so important. Many people can want to be like someone or be a certain level, but would they really want their story? Would they want their life path to have to get there? Right? That's what I say to people. You know, I've have people say things to me, and I say, "Would you really have wanted my life? Do you want my life the way it is right now?" Now, that's what you've got to understand. Everybody has their own life challenges and has their own path to bear. And everybody has like we all have absolute amazing gifts. And sometimes people are just so focused on the things that look fancy and the things that maybe look as if they're going to create more money or look different or whatever, right? But often the most powerful things we can do are the most simple things we do in our work, right? So it's important to remember that, first of all. Also, what you've got to remember is that most people wouldn't want someone else's life. And with a gift, with any gift, and then especially in the spiritual work and the healing work, with that gift and with that purpose has came a lot of pain and challenges. And often it's better to stick to because we may think we want someone else's life and we want someone else's gifts, but would we have want the pain and suffering that came with those gifts? Your pain and suffering's enough, right? And just remember, out of your pain and suffering comes the greatest gifts. Does. I mean, I've been in situations in my life where I just thought, what the hell is going on? I remember when I mean, I'm someone you know, I've invested so much in my health and well-being, and I still do, right? And there's been situations in my life where, honest to goodness, it was like miracles happened, right? But there was other things that I was heartbroken and I felt like a complete failure, that I was a healer that was not fully healed, right? And I had so much things said to me from people who said a lot of things but weren't very wise and didn't really fully understand what they were saying. And I talk about this quite freely. I always say that a lot of my trauma was caused also being in, was around the medical field and sometimes around the holistic field, just because of certain things that was done and said, right? Being very energetically sensitive, and and I'm not saying that's, and I'm trying not to take it from a victim perspective, but there is an energetic component. Of course, we have to take responsibility to what we allow in our field, and I was letting other people's energetic views into my field, right? But one of the things that I learned out that was that was a life lesson. I was giving my power away to other people instead of really owning what my inner guidance was telling me, right? And I learned that there's a lot of BS in the holistic and spiritual sector. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and it's like, we all arrive in many ways at nursery. We may have arrived with spiritual wisdom, but it's kind of lost. But in many ways, it's like a child going to nursery. And sometimes we think we're in high school and we think we're at university level. We're not really. And there's some things we get taught that are not really the truth. And they're not really, or it's how we understand it. And that's what it's about. And some people jump through nursery and manage to go through high school or whatever very easy. Some of us still get stuck in nursery for a wee while. Then we make big leaps. And it's just like. But also, there's this thing that there is a really strange thing that's happened in the spiritual industry is it's became an industry where a lot of us come in here as a vacation, but I've noticed, particularly, I suppose, the last 10 years and 5 years, it's just heightened, where a lot of people are entering it just to make money, and they see it as a way to make money. They're not just, it's not in their soul. And that can cause a lot of problems in the industry, because then the quality of things, it's maybe not being done from the most ethical perspective or spiritual perspective. And it can cause a lot of chaos and confusion for consumers, because there's so many myths. We've seen so many things watered down and over commercialized in the spiritual community. A lot of things being missold. I'm not going to name names, but there's lots of big, what you would class as well-known holistic and spiritual names, where I stopped following, because it was very clear it was only about the money, and it was a lot of sacred things were getting what you would call as well, it's a sweet, well, I think some people would call it a sweary word. Basically, you take something and you kind of destroy it and manipulate it, and that's what we've seen. And because of that, there is a lot of also misinformation, which can confuse us all, right? But the reality is, where you are right now is where you're supposed to be. It's part of your learning curve, right? I'm still not fully healed. I had to go in a situation, yes, it was my dad's 80th. And in some ways, I'm still kind of upset about it, that I can't, I'm still not well enough to be able to, because I still have challenges around noise and vibration. So my sister had to come, and it's a bit of a drama sometimes to take me to see parents. My mum's very ill at the moment, and there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on also my family, and it's quite hard. But I had to get into a situation where, I couldn't see the whole of my family, because my family's huge, and the amount of noise, and they're getting work done in the family home, so there's builders and things like that, and it was a bit much for me, right? And I had to come home, and I still feel my energy is very jagged. I've done a lot of work on myself, but very jagged. I've used all sorts of things to try and keep my energy real strong, but I'm not 100%, right? I'm not 100%, but I am in many ways 100,000 times better than what I was, um, 7, 8 years ago, when I couldn't even, the slightest noise in the house would knock me over, would cause me horrendous pain for days. But the reality is, but that doesn't mean that I can't still live my mission. I believe, and I've realised there's a lot of reasons, even to do my path, that put me in situations, and because of my circumstances, and because I was looking for solutions, I met people around the world, worked with, I mean, phenomenal types of healers and teachers that I would never have met if my circumstances hadn't happened the way it was. I also I've been protected from lots of things energetically, and been able to see things in other ways, and see energy from a different perspective because of my learning. Now, you are all the same. You have your own unique path for a reason. You're not here to be someone else, and you're not here to run and, no one masters anything in a month, in a year, right? Okay, of course, we're evolving spiritually, and there's a lot of things we can shift, right? But there's also this thing that there's, even in the coaching industry, it's this, a lot of misinformation that makes people think that they should be, like, for example, achieving 6K months and all this, and they should be able to achieve this, achieve that, be an expert in a year, be an expert in 2 years, be doing this or whatever. And it puts a lot of pressure on people, but it's so misaligned with what their purpose is, right? It's so off track. You are here to do what you are here to do. And even if you're struggling at the moment and you don't know what, be compassionate towards yourself. Now, how do you manage to move through when you are struggling. How do you get through? Well, of course, you try and lessen your load. I've really, I mean, a lot of people don't realise, but I have reduced so much that I've been doing the last couple of years because of different family things going on. And energetically, also with me, there were certain things that I knew I needed to do, and I wanted to commit certain energy to other things because I knew that I was going to be needed for other work. Right, I could see it coming for the last 5 years. I knew there were certain things, but I'd stepped in to do more the marketing aspect for different reasons, and it was part of so that I could build some aspects up for myself and just keep my stress coach training stuff going. But we're all shifting, and some of that means us not knowing exactly what we're going to do next. And actually, that's often even better. Because see, when you're like that, you're not allowing the ego to say, well, it's got to look like this. Part of the spiritual path is the ability to surrender and the ability to be honest with herself when something isn't working and something is not fully aligned and that we're not being fully committed. Because when we're not being fully committed to our clients or our customers or something, it's so important then to relook at that, right? It is so important. But it's so important also to be kind to yourself and to say, right, okay, what energetically am I able to fully show up for right now, right? Where can I make it easy on myself, right? And what archetypes are showing up for me at the moment? I am doing a coaching and healing session on helping people step more into sovereignty. And one of the reasons why is that when we are being triggered and when old wounds are coming up, we can fall into there's four main what we call the archetypes that show up and to do with wounding. And it's the child archetype, the victim, the prostitute, and the saboteur. And the child brings up all, the child wounding, and it can be positive aspects of that. So don't, it's not always completely negative. There's positive aspects as well, of course, the child archetype is about tapping into that, right? So it's not always about but in all of these ones, and in the victim, obviously, and we can see this. A lot of us talk about different aspects of the inner child, but when you look at the victim, it is about not taking responsibility and blaming everyone else, and maybe sometimes even a sense of entitlement because you want to be the victim. And if we look at the prostitute, that has been willing to sell her soul and just do something to make money, or not being quite honest and be willing just to do or to say things that are not truthful just to get to achieve and to influence and to get on, right? And it's about either kidding herself or kidding anybody else on, right? The saboteur is when we sabotage our ability to succeed, and that could be things like procrastination. It can be not showing up, but not being fully committed, not really doing the work, looking for all sorts of distractions, and or not investing, not doing, not being willing to put the work in, right? Not being willing to do certain things, having blocks around things, but just because you've got a block, not going and trying to get that block solved, right? So there's so many layers to this, but no matter what layer's going on, I want you to think about the compassionate mother above all that. And the compassionate mother, if you look at Gaia and the earth, right? The Mother Earth provides us no matter what we do. It's terrible, but she provides for us, right? She gives us a place of security, a place of support, right? And of course, you can keep it if you keep abusing that, something starts to give and something starts to play up. But the reality is, stop abusing yourself, right? Stop abusing yourself. There's a fine line being honest with yourself and not hiding your head in the sand And then there's the line of being really hard on yourself, being dragging yourself down, and being self-loathing. It's important to move that up, and to, make sure that we've been also motherly, and we're not being, I mean, I know I can definitely have the strong judgment. Now, when you get the judgment card, what the positive aspect is that as someone, it has strong sense of discernment, and notices, there's small things about discernment. But also the opposite of that is the judgment card, where we are judging other people all the time, or we're judging situations. I can be very judgy. I'm one of these kind of people. I'm a very stickler for doing things certain ways, right? And I know that's not, and that will rub other archetypes up the wrong way, kind of thing. But that's part of who we're all at. And it's also what we've got to understand is these aspects of our light and our shadow tree are actually often linked to our purpose. So interesting, one of the things that came out a lot about my soul's blueprint was that truth is really, really important to me, and that kind of integrity of truth and getting to the truth of things. But what overrides mine is also, but there is the fight with the compassion and the care, and doing things is trying to do as a motherly way. Now, sometimes I'm too heavy-handed, and then maybe sometimes I'm too soft and generous. It's important to observe your light and shadow aspects of your most dominant archetypes, but it's important to care for yourself. So I'm just going to leave it at that now, because I'm starting to get a bit dry. But kind, please be kind to yourself. We're going through a lot of tough energies at the moment, and a lot of us, things are showing up in personal lives that are challenging, and they're all a gift as well. No matter how much we're struggling or dealing with different challenges, that is life. Challenges come to give us more wisdom and to give us more strength, and we always get out the other end, and we get out the other end from often a bigger sense of insight and wisdom. And maybe sometimes we don't feel strong right away after it, but later down the line we say, I know there's things in my life that didn't make any sense. And people would say, oh my God, what a waste of life. I mean, I've had people say to me, what a waste of your life. There's so much of your life. But do I look at my life now and ever say that all these circumstances were a waste of life? Even those years when I was bedbound and housebound, of course there's aspects of me that I missed out, but I have gained so much. I was able to use years to gain insight into things that people, while everyone else was doing other things, I was able also, had a lot of downtime, which I wasn't physically able to do certain things, but I had a lot of downtime to be able to invest. Whenever people had fancy cars and fancy houses or going out partying or doing things or going on holiday, I had my head in a book. It's in a book or a course or something. And out of that, that's what my life's produced. But someone else has got a beautiful family, a beautiful relationship, right? Beautiful experiences. We're all different. So appreciate what you have. Appreciate that you are an important part of the jigsaw, but be kind and caring towards yourself. It's so, so important. We have to do it. Believe me, I'm not always, I can be very critical. I'm one of the most critical person. I tend to be quite hard on myself and expect a lot of myself. And I know a lot of you do the same. But we have to learn to be more compassionate, caring towards ourselves and towards other people. Because remember, what we send out, if we send compassion and care out towards other people, we get it back. Now, for using the group, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put underneath this the Ho'oponopono, the modern Ho'oponopono. A lot of misunderstanding about the Ho'oponopono. The Ho'oponopono that goes out is actually a very, very watered and not really like the original traditional Hawaiian Ho'oponopono, but it's still a lovely little kind of prayer, a little kind of like a mantra. I'm always reluctant to use the word mantra because I think overused in a sacrilege way, but you get what I'm talking about. I'll put that a link to, it's not the greatest video I've got on that. It was something that was done many years ago, but there's a little video and you can use it, and we can use it in the group. For those of you that are in the group, if you're not in the group, it's fine. I'll still put the link below for the link to the Ho'oponopono prayer that you can use for self-compassion and self-forgiveness for yourself, and even self-compassion and self-forgiveness towards other people you may have a wee gripe with, or a wee resentment with, or a wee issue with. And that can also work within, it's good, it can work in Facebook groups, because obviously when we all have different views and different ideas about things, and we can be a wee bit annoyed by things, and something people can trigger us, and of course we want to raise the vibration. So I'm going to put that underneath the video, and it can be a really nice thing to so for those in the group, what I'm going to do is, if you want, you can add your name on it underneath when I put the link, you can put your name underneath it, and then anyone who wants to say the Ho'oponopono prayer for you, they can say that, and you can then maybe do it for them. I'll put a wee note at the bottom of this and explain how you can do it. Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone, and a wonderful weekend. Bye bye.